if there's no mistake from Charles Espenlaub. Here the Porsche will sweep to the right-hand side but can't get through. He's coming down to the last corner. Here comes the Porsche. It's not close enough. So long as there's no wheel spin out of here, it's going to be CP. CP defend the win from last year, and the winning margin is half a second. It's the run to the line. Workman's off the track. He's got all four Michelin's over the white line. He's defending.
Everything interesting happens off the racing line.
Welcome back to Off the Racing Line. I am your host, Carlos Espenlaub, and we are back. Mike Moore, welcome, man.
Here I am. Happy New Year. Is there a... We may be past that, though.
Yes.
Is it? Yeah. There's like some kind of a... You have like a week to do that.
There's going to be a delay.
We're beyond that.
This one will be aired, I think, late January, maybe early February.
Well, happy Groundhog Day, Carlos.
Yes. Hey, episode 24.
Yeah. Speaking of Groundhog Day, who would have thought?
I know. Hey, listen, we got an outstanding episode today, so let's get started. Today's guest is a veteran endurance racer and one of the most battle-tested drivers in international sports car racing. He has won at the highest levels of endurance racing with an overall victory in the 24-hour series at Portimao, back-to-back wins at the 12 Hours of Kuwait, and a class victory at the Nürburgring 24 hours, one of the most demanding races on the planet. He's also a 24-hour Series GT3-Am champion with podium finishes across Europe at tracks like Spa, Monza, and Barcelona. This is a driver who spent decades in the trenches of endurance racing, not just showing up, but finishing, winning, and leading teams through the toughest races in the world. Charles Espenlaub, welcome to Off the Racing Line. It's good to have you, man.
Yeah, thanks, Carlos. Mike, good to be here. I'm still kind of cracking up with our pre-recording stuff, but
that was our warm-up.
I appreciate the intro. I should get you to write some more stuff for me.
You know what's interesting about that is that we had Weston Workman a few weeks ago at Homestead, and when I was putting together the intro, it was like pretty lengthy, and he's 19. Yours, like, I had to truncate it, like, severely because I would still be reading off all your accomplishments. So there's a lot more to get into. So without further ado, why don't we start talking about your international endurance racing wins?
Okay.
You had back-to-back wins at Kuwait.
Yes. So
I watched the second one, I believe, where one of your co-drivers was Shane Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
Really exciting watching the last several minutes of that race. There was a Porsche behind you who was gaining. Talk us through that.
Oh, it was a heck of a battle. Being able to race in Kuwait for one. I mean, it was, that was the second year. When we went there the first year, I mean, obviously it's Kuwait. You don't know what to expect. But I can tell you when you drove through the gates of the track, it's one of the most beautiful facilities you've ever seen. So anyway, that was the second race. We're going for our thing, and the guys were, lots of competition, and I got stuck in at the end, and it was a tooth and nail fight for 45 minutes straight. I mean, it was bumper to bumper, and it was pretty intense. And they had pace on us pretty much the whole week, but we're the tough old guys, and we kept good pace, and we know how to manage the tire, which was important in that series. And he got to me a little bit, and then, I could stretch him a little in traffic. We were a little stronger in a couple places on the track, and I'm like, you know what, we're going to win this thing. And, I put my head down, so to speak,
mm-hmm.
and it was close, and it was very emotional for all of us. And I just remember I got out of the car. Of course, Shane comes over, everybody, we're all there and this and that, and he's like, oh, my God, it's great. And I'm like, man, I do not know how many more of those I got in me, So
I remember watching, and we'll add this in post, but you got out, you were all smiles, you stood up, and I don't know, just from a viewer's perspective, you stood up and you're like, wow, I'm really tired. And then you kind of sat back down, like on the hood or on the cage. That was it, right?
Oh, yeah. It was all I had for that, for sure. So, you get, as you guys know, not that you're that old, but when you get a little older, it's a little tougher. But, it's great to have the opportunity to do it. And then, obviously we had, as I mentioned before, it was, with Shane and Joe Foster and Charlie Putman, we drove together for years. And, Charlie and I drove together for almost 30 years. And, we're like brothers. And it's to share that. And our team that we had there, the CP Racing team that we put together, was a combination of bunch of German guys. We brought a bunch of guys that we know from here in the States. And just the combination of the team. And, for me, that's the endurance racing part of it. It's the team. It's everybody played a part in that win, and it's just, that's what it's all about. Like,
I have so many questions in regards to endurance racing. I guess in our small world, here in South Florida, when I think of endurance racing, the first thing that comes to mind is like Champ Car, right? And then maybe WRL. But we're talking about this international racing, GT cars, GT3s, GT4s. What does it take to win a race like that? A 12-hour, 24-hour race, tire management, like what goes into it?
It's everything in the endurance race. I mentioned the team aspect. Everybody on the team is an important part of that, and obviously it's a lot of the strategy and a lot of setup, and it's not just being the old guys. We didn't need to be the fastest guy in qualifying. We didn't need to, none of our guys were out there to turn the fastest lap and be like, hey, look, I got the fastest lap. We were concerned how fast we could go over the stint and what we needed to do to help the car and keep the car out of trouble for those endurance races, And there was hardly ever a time where we were the fastest car. We hardly ever qualified near the front, but always, 4, 5, 6 hours in, once the strategy started playing out, we were always right there. And it was just, everybody knew what their job was, and we played that strategy and we stuck to our strategy. And it, and again, we were on a hand-cooked tire, which is an okay tire, but it's a really hard management tire. So you'd get a lot of the pro teams that would come in from other series. They're used to the Michelin or the Yokohama or some, Pirelli. And the Hankook was capable of a good lap time, but not for a long time unless you knew how to set it up and took care of it for that time. So, we set it up earlier even before we were running the Mercedes AMG GT3, we were running a Porsche Cup car. And, a lot of teams would bring in these Carrera Cup kids and stuff, and they'd be blistering fast for about 6 laps, and then we figured out, a whole bunch of 44s for an hour beats a bunch of 42s and then a bunch of 46s.
Yeah.
And, so we, to answer your question, bottom line, it's a team effort, and it's a set the goal. We're going to win this race, and this is what we need to do. Stick to it. Keep the car out of trouble. Don't put the car in risk. Don't shove it in on a guy that you may not know quite well.
Right.
And it was tricky at first because, we raced in the States for years, and, you get to know everybody, and here I'm coming up on Todd or somebody. I know he's heads up, I can do this or that. Oh, there's this jackass, I got to give him a little more room. He's probably going to try and block me even though he's 2 laps down or whatever. And it took a bit to get that knowledge of the Europeans. And I got to admit, they kind of tried to rough us up a little bit when we first showed up.
So that was one of the questions that I have for you is, do Americans get treated maybe a little differently competing in European circuits?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, it depends on the series and where you're at. Because when we first went to Europe in 2013 to kind of feel the waters out, we ran a bunch of different series. And some of the series were used to, obviously, a lot of the American pro guys that would come back and forth that are factory drivers. And then some of the series, they were like, Americans, blah, blah, blah. And we got roughed up a little bit. And Charlie, obviously, my co-driver, team owner, stuff, and he goes, we need to put it into that. If somebody, feel free. So I got
what does that mean?
Give it back. If they give it to you, give it back. So we got uncorked for a couple races, and then after that they kind of, okay, these guys are serious, and then we started finishing well.
Yeah.
So they, you get a mutual respect that way. But it took a little bit. I got to admit, they were a little rough on us, and
they made you earn their respect.
Right. And it's like, who's these kids? What are they doing?
Yeah.
And
gotta show them that you're not going to be pushed around,
right? I give what you give, So they'll give you the respect if you give me the respect. And then once we got that, it was really nice. So
right,
really cool.
I got a couple questions, just circling back to your sort of tire management and strategy questions. It's something that I always find fascinating, and I think of the numerous differences between a professional and the weekend warriors, Carlos as myself, is 2 questions. One, you mentioned that tire management strategy, you would go out and run, a bunch of 44s better than a bunch of 42s and a 46s. Is that 2 seconds? I don't know if you were just sort of spitballing that. Is that a realistic amount that you are intentionally holding back? Are you driving at 98% instead of 100%?
Yeah. Yeah, two seconds might be a little stretch, but
Okay.
yeah, there were some instances where it was that much on a longer track, like Paul Ricard or something. I really remember Paul Ricard because that was one of the ones you could use a lot of the curbs and stuff and get some lap time, and it was a 2-second gap to where we were running, but we were every time 44, whatever. I can't remember what the exact lap time was,
Right.
but it was about a 2-second gap. But halfway through the stint, here they come back to us, and before long, at the end of the stint, they were off the tire, and half the time they blew the shock out of the car by 6 hours in.
Right, from using
like that.
using too much curb.
It was, and then again, obviously they were coming in and not very familiar with the tire. And I remember we did the 24-hour race at Sebring in 2021, and Turner came in with BMW and Oberlin. We've raced hard against each other for many, many years, and good mutual respect there. And he came up and asked him and Rob Foley, who were talking in this, and I said, he flat out asked, he said, do I need to know anything about this tire? And I'm like, yeah, stay off the curbs for 2 laps. Don't get suckered into running the low tire pressure. Here's where you need to cambers and stuff. You'll find lap time in it, but it's not going to last. And yeah, he's a competitor and stuff, but obviously he's a respected racing friend, and so I didn't mind sharing that information with him, and he was smart enough to ask somebody that's been racing on the tire for 7 years. So it interesting. It's some people don't want that or even think about asking it, and they won't even take that advice.
Right.
So it there's a lot to learn anytime you go to a new series, and we ran many different series, and the way the stewards, the way they gonna warrant the contact or track limits or something, everybody looks at it a little different. You got to kind of learn that. And, being that we raced all across Europe and Australia and, the Emirates and Dubai and Kuwait, you kind of see a little bit of different stuff. So that's part of it, and it's that old wise, old guy experience kind of can sometimes make up for
Sure.
what we can't do as youngsters anymore,
And I think that's fascinating when you think about the fact that you've raced in just about every continent. So one of the things that I always, wonder about in my limited amount of, exposure to different racetracks, I've maybe driven 6 or 7 different ones. How do you get, how do you acquire knowledge on a new track and a new road course when you get there, knowing that you're going to be racing there in 24 hours or what have you?
Yeah, a couple weeks or whatever. I mean, generally my go-to is I just look for in-car, honestly.
Video.
Yeah, in-car video, trying to get a similar thing. When we went to Kuwait, there was very limited. They had never done a race there.
Yeah, there's no sim that's going to have that.
Yeah, there's no sim that had it. So I found somebody driving a Corvette around there, and another guy had a Ferrari or something, and I just watched it, and I'm like, okay. And there's a bunch of different configurations.
Yeah.
And then the Creventex series is really good. They have where you can do the tourist car laps. You can take your rental car out there, and
Sure.
they give you some time to see it and this and that. And that series in particular, they're really good about having some full test days up to it, so you have a pretty good amount of time. But yeah, to answer your question, it's usually watching the videos, and then as of late, the last couple of years, I mentioned I had gone to the Chicane Club earlier today because they were near here and did some sim work. So we did some sim work with them, and like when we went to Abu Dhabi a couple of years ago, I've driven that track since 2015, and they had changed it. So all of us came down there and went over there and did some sim work with Greg.
What was your favorite racetrack, like international racetrack to race in?
So it always goes back to the Nürburgring.
Yeah.
Is the ultimate favorite, but it's such an outlier as far as you can't compare it to regular racetracks. It's just, especially like the 24-hour, because there's such a disparity in speed. There's so many cars, the atmosphere, the track itself is just bonkers, right? And it's completely unsafe. Like, the first time we drove it, I got to drive we had driven GT4 cars and Cup cars and stuff there. And then the first time we went and drove a GT3 car there, I got out and I was shaking my head, and the guys couldn't see me smiling, but I got out of the car and I'm just shaking my head, and they were like, "What's wrong?" And I took my helmet off and I had the biggest smile, and I'm like, I cannot believe they let you drive a car like this around this track. It's just crazy. The greatest experience ever, but it's absolutely crazy that.
Realistically, how long, in comparison's sake, like if you compare a track like Sebring or something, Sebring may not be like Road Atlanta, how long does it take to truly learn that track, right? Because you go around a track like Homestead, and on like lap 5, you're like, okay, I know the next corner is a left.
I
would think of the Nürburgring after like 6 hours, you would still be like, I have no idea. Is this a sweeper? Is this a hairpin? Like, what is happening?
It is. I always took pride in myself of it being somebody that I could learn a track really quick. Like you could take me somewhere, and within a couple laps, I kind of could figure it out pretty good. And then that was it. It took a reset. And they've changed the rules since. But when we first went there in 2013, you could race. You could just jump in anything and go. And we were racing Cup cars at the time, so we just took a Cup car there. Absolute dumbest thing I've ever done in my life is to jump in a 997 Cup car and go try to learn the Nürburgring. It's a pretty fast car.
Right, you're better off in like a VW Golf or something.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right.
And it was like I was that guy. I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. And I had studied it and watched video on this, and I thought I knew this, and I'm like, nope, that's not that right corner. I could have been flat over there. And then here goes this guy in a Golf. Past you because he's been flat for a half a mile, and then you catch up to him and you kind of go by him, and it took a little bit, and we knocked off a bunch. Charlie and I both knocked off the little chin splitter on the 997 quite a few times. So, but then then we came back, and then we got more time, but it still took a good weekend to get to where I was comfortable knowing the track enough. But honestly, I've raced there for 13 years now, and I still learn every time I go out there, because every time you go back, they've paved a section. You come back 2 weeks after you've been there, and like, oh, these leaves are falling off of this tree in this section now, so it gets a little slicker there.
Sure.
And you come in the morning session, it's still dewy because you're going up through the mountain, and it changes. 20 minutes later, the sun's shining there, and now there's a bunch of grip there, but then over there, something happened over there. So it's just a constant learning, and it's one of the things that makes that so unique and thing. So I always, when people ask me what's your favorite track or this and that, and it's always, I say Nürburgring, but it's an outlier. If you got to take that out of the picture, and then I kind of go back to Spa.
Yeah.
I love obviously the natural terrain, good tracks like that are really high speed and
Sure.
really difficult. Like you got to really, it's a driver's track.
Yeah.
And, you can lose a lot of time by just pulling up your skirt. It just depends how high you're going to pull the skirt up. See, can I go? Can I do it? So, Bathurst is up there, obviously. That's as advertised. I mean, driving that thing is just unbelievable. It's a true driver's track again. It's hard to say. Way back in the day before I was married, they'd be like, well, what's your favorite track? And I'm like, well, that's kind of asking me, was Miss February hotter than Miss March?
It's really like that, huh?
Or
It's a first world problem.
I know you're kind of sweet on Sydney Sweeney. Is Sydney Sweeney hotter than whatever? So
The next thing.
it was hard to say. Like, well, I love it. I've never met a racetrack I didn't like. Some of them I just like a little more than the others.
Of course.
So, but yes, I would say you take Nürburgring out, then it's Spa.
Yeah.
And then, probably Bathurst. I think probably after that. North American
crazy.
tracks
I
would
mean,
be Motorsport. I love the high-speed natural terrain track, Watkins Glen, VIR. VIR has always been a favorite of mine.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people don't like it, but
Where does Sebring land in those rankings within the U.S.?
I'd put it in the top 5.
Yeah.
And it's kind of,
Other than the complete lack of terrain that you like so much.
yeah, but it's so unique. And my dad raced a car there, in the 60s. And it was like, I remember going there when I was a little kid. And it's just, when I drove it for the first time, I was just like, oh my God, it's like they said it. And then, I was a chief instructor for Panos there for 7 years. So it's like, it's a home track. That's a track my first race was there. I've spent the most amount of time there. Yeah. And, it's probably in my heart, it's my home track, kind of probably one of my favorite, but it's not the track. Like if somebody said, I only have 3 tracks that I can drive for, and that's it, Sebring wouldn't be in the top 3.
Sebring's not your Sydney Sweeney.
No.
Right.
It's still, she's a sweetheart, and I love her, but it's not something I would suggest. I've got 6 months to live. What 3 tracks do I need to go drive?
No.
I probably wouldn't say Sebring.
Carlos is going to be camped out at Sebring,
Yeah.
Right. Just 24/7.
It's hard. It's the hardest track. For sure, it's the hardest endurance track to drive on.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, that's why factories fly their prototypes here and do testing all the time, because if they can make it last there, it'll be a breeze anywhere else.
I always use that as a little bit of a feather on my cap, knowing that teams from around the world come and test at Sebring.
Yeah.
Because if their cars, like you said, last there, it'll last anywhere.
Yeah, well, IndyCar still tests on the short track.
Yeah, it's great.
It's the hardest track for braking.
Yeah, it's great. I don't know. I think it maybe Chin is there the weekend before they test. So that Sunday, as all the HPD guys are pulling out, the paddock is just loaded up with Chip Ganassi and Team Penske, and it's really cool to see all the rigs lined up on Midway waiting to come in.
Yeah, it's
HPD guys leaving. They're like, all right, guys, have fun.
yeah.
We warmed it up for you.
Right, yeah.
It was super cool when I was running the school down there. We're prepping the cars over in the garage, and then we kind of had carte blanche on the track. If we needed to go test a car or something, IndyCar to be there. And then I remember we're sitting there, and I hear this thing go by, and I'm like, what the heck was that? And it, goes by again, and we're like, so we walk out on the wall, and that's when the first day we're testing the Audi diesel, the TDI prototype, and it made a completely different noise. Obviously, they hadn't even really announced that they were there doing the testing, and it was just like, holy cow, that thing is something else, And so then, of course, Cadillac would show up, or Pratt & Miller would show up with the new Corvette, and they'd be testing, and it was super cool to be there a lot, and all the different stuff that happens there when you don't realize that you go there a couple times a year, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, that place is rented out a lot for testing.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's for sure a good test track and endurance track, and it's.
Want to drive on a real racetrack but don't have a car? Velocity Track Experience offers track-ready car rentals for HPDE and racing. Whether you're flying in from out of state, out of the country, or you want full track support without worrying about prep, maintenance, or transport, this is your arrive and drive solution. From an agile Mazda MX-5 to a fully prepped BMW race car, Velocity provides everything you need to hit the track with confidence, including expert support and optional coaching. Just book your favorite track car, show up, and drive. Go to velocitytrackexperience.com and start your track adventure today.
Let's talk about you racing with Shane Lewis. We joked about Shane Lewis several episodes ago, and I joked that Shane Lewis is like the Kevin Bacon of motorsports, where everybody has a 7 degrees of separation from Shane Lewis. So when I found out that you raced with them, I'm like, well, there he is again. How did you like racing with him?
We loved him. He fit in with the profile pretty good. Obviously, Charlie's a very well-off guy, and he had his racing program, and he could have hired any driver that he wants to come and drive with him. His deal was he wanted to enjoy his experience with his drivers, right? And obviously, Joe Foster and we knew him from when he first started racing at the Pano School, and we're with him through pretty much his whole career, guiding him. And he ran with us when I had my little Spec Miata team when we did endurance races, and we just, we had a family thing, and he wanted that. And then when it came up in the Crevantech series, they use the driver ranking pretty good, and they have an AM advantage, an AM class, so you can get a little bit bigger restrictor, a little less weight, you get a little bit more fuel at the stop. And there was an advantage to having a bronze driver in the car. I think I was still a gold at the time. How Shane Lewis, who's only, I think, 2 years older than me, got to be bronze 6 years before I did, is a testament to his ability to, and I'm not saying he did anything wrong, but his ability to, he's a very likable guy, and he knows how to, he talks to people in the right way, and so much so that it's always funny. Like, we'd be in the paddock, and like Charlie's wife Diane is like, oh, can you bring the car in? And they won't let me bring the car in. I'd be like, Shane, go get the car. It's like, they're not going to let him in. That guy's, 5 minutes. Here comes Shane pulling in with the car.
Yeah.
Or we went to, one of my favorite stories is we were at the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, the world's tallest building. And you can reserve a thing, and you can go like to the normal floor, and then there's another thing you can go to the top floor. But it was sold out this time. We go there. That was our thing. We're going to go there every year. We go up there. We watch the sunset, drink a little bit, whatever. And that thing was sold out. And so it was me, Shane, and Joe, and we were in line, and we met a guy that was flying back. He was a attorney in Washington, D.C. His family was from India, and he had an extra long layover in Dubai because he wanted to go to the Burj Khalifa. So he was there. So we were up there, and we were telling him how nice it was at the upper floor and all this stuff, and it was sold out and this and that. And he's like, I'm like, yeah, man, it'd be really cool to see it. I said, Shane, I can't believe you can't get us up there. And he was like, turned around, walked away. And, this guy's an attorney, nice guy, super good conversation. And he goes, what's that all about? And I said, he'll get it done. He's like, what? 5 minutes later, Shane goes, come on. Walked over. The lady led us through the little thing. They had the elevator that takes you up there, and up we went.
He's just that personable.
He's that personable. He's that guy. He can get it done. And he's He's a great guy, great driver. One of the best co-drivers I've ever had on the pro level. You know, I mean, we had a lot of factory drivers come in, and some of them are all they care about is being the fastest guy and showing what they can do, and And, hey, we need you to do this pace, or we need you. I can't drive that slow. You know, well, we need you to save the fuel, because if you save the fuel, then we're only gonna have one more stop to the end. We could win this thing. I can't drive. You know, and then it just. You know, Shane, I need you to do this, and boop, and he did it. It was never about him. He was always a team player.
It's the kind of people that you want to have in the paddock with you, or
absolutely.
in the car.
Yeah, no, absolute. You know, fit right in, and it was a really good choice. We had obviously when the thing came, we need a bronze driver. You know, I go through my list of people that I know that are bronzes, and and we're going back and forth with our, Nathan, our engineer, and Charlie, and we're like this and this, and we narrowed it down, this and that, and I said, well, let me make some calls. And we had previously, Andy Pilgrim, racing hero of mine when I first started racing, helped me out a lot. I met him through Jim Bell and some other guys, and he was always really good. And he came and drove with us for a couple times, which was a real honor for me. And then he had other things. He's a super busy guy and stuff. So
he's raced a few times with Farah, with David Tuati.
Yeah, he's a great guy. We I remember when I first started running World Challenge, they want you to do the little profiling thing, and they're like, who are your racing heroes? And everybody's putting Senna and, Schumacher and And I put Andy Pilgrim, Michael Galati, and they're like, you see those guys every weekend. And I'm like, yeah, and they're there, and they're the true grit guys, and they took the time to help me out.
Sure.
And, they were my heroes, and they still are, those guys, and Shane's right there in that group. He's got the passion, it's the passion of the sport, and to share that and to do what it takes. And the big thing is to be a team player,
Sure.
And those guys, they're all team players.
Shane Lewis is very personable. So speaking of personable, let's switch gears for a second. When I was doing some research on you in preparation for the show, I came across an article, a headline, because I wasn't able to read the entire thing because I got caught up in a few other things. But the article read that Charles Espenlaub was the most hated driver in motorsports. And that kind of just stuck in my head. Like, that's not the picture that I got from talking to other people, like Todd Burres. He's like, oh, you got to have Charles on the show. He's the nicest guy. I'm like, this doesn't match. That headline doesn't match what I understood about you. So I'll let you tell the story. Like, why is that?
Yeah.
Not for the reasons we think.
I got that a lot. It's like, wait a minute. Like, what? Wait. And it was a couple, it was more of a joke when it got into. So, when I was with Dempsey Racing, obviously Patrick Dempsey is a very popular actor and good-looking guy and super nice, very personable, one of the greatest guys I've ever met. But I was running World Challenge, but I would come and do the endurance races with him. And then I would come and fill in for him in the Grand Am races when he wasn't. I mean, he'd have to go shoot a movie or some, whatever, this piddly stuff that he did, shooting TV shows or whatever. So when I was there, he wasn't there, obviously. So then, and sometimes it was like literally last minute, And so I remember one time we were at Daytona, and I think we were running Mustangs and GS at the time, and I was running another car, and they were like, hey, we need you to fill in for Patrick. Can you come shake the car down or whatever? So I ran over and jumped in the thing, and I drive, and I come back to the garage, in Daytona, and there's a sea of people there, and they split out. And I drive
camera
in, and they're taking pictures and this and that, and I jumped out. I have my helmet on, and everybody's taking pictures. And I'm like, well, they're going to be just take my helmet off, and they're like, oh, you're not Patrick. And I'm like, no, he couldn't be here this weekend. He'll be here. I think that was the roar. So I said he'll be here for the race for sure. But this, and everybody's like, turn around and start walking away. And the crew guys, of course, are laughing, and I'm like, whatever. And this one lady kind of turned around and took my picture, and I'm like, well, at least one lady thinks.
Like she,
It's just because she didn't know who Patrick Dempsey looked like.
Right. She was like, I don't know why everybody's standing here taking pictures of him.
Yeah, he's a race car driver. I'll take a picture of him.
Yeah, so that's why I was the most hated guy in Grand Am or racing.
It was just the disappointment.
Yeah, it was just because of disappointment.
Right.
And I, honestly,
you're used to that at this point in time, probably.
It was a good moniker to have to be involved with that program. I mean, it was a great program, and like I said, he was really, and I've worked with not a lot, but quite a few higher end celebrity guys and women over the years, and he's really a good down to earth guy, like really just cared about the team and, getting stuff done.
And he was a decent driver.
Yeah, and he was a great driver. Again, if he could have just done it full time, he would have been, could have kept going. He really got really good. And, it was kind of in the beginning when he was just getting on Grey's Anatomy and starting to get his fame back a little bit. And it was, there's people there, and we'd have to shuttle him around, sneak him out of the back truck just so you could take a piss, and it's like, it was, for sure overwhelming. So it kind of funny story. When I first met him, I knew he had come through the school in Panos at Road Atlanta, and I was flying back and forth between all the schools and this and that. And I remember Joe Foster had said, yeah, Patrick Dempsey, this and that, and I'm like, I remember that guy. He was like in that pizza movie or something, whatever. But anyway, old Road Atlanta, you'd walk down, there was the stairs to go down to the pit lane there. And I had showed up, I just landed, I was there for school the next day, and I'm walking down the stairs, and he comes walking up, and he's like, hey. I'm like, hey. And I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me, and I'm like, should I know you? And he goes, well, I'm Pat, he introduced himself, shook his hand and stuff, and this and that, and I'm go, oh, you're one of those faggot film guys. And he looks at me and he goes, yeah, I guess you could say that.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, cool. And then we talked for a few minutes and whatever. And so literally, it's still in my phone, I think, faggot film guy. And
you saved his name on his number.
And it just and he was totally just, rolled right with it, just like he's a normal guy like you. I haven't known you guys that long, but obviously we're getting along pretty good.
That's awesome.
He was just a really good, down-to-earth guy.
Yeah.
And he did the sport good.
And you were a part of his team for some time.
Yeah.
I believe you guys were racing. Initially, was that Mazda? Was it an RX-7?
The RX-8, yeah.
RX-8.
The Speed Source built RX-8s.
Is that what you predominantly raced with him, or
yeah?
You eventually?
So he started, like I said, in kind of with the at that time it was Hypersport racing, Hypersport engineering, and they were running Mustangs and GS, and then they moved up to the thing. And I was obviously heavily involved with Mazda at the time, and they were looking for a better program for him. And then I was like, I'll make a call. So I called Jim Jordan at Mazda, and it just all the pieces fell together. They were looking for somebody to come in, and it just worked out. He was obviously a huge draw for sponsorship, so we had a really good funded program, and it just worked out really well with Mazda for many years. And then, eventually he moved on. He's a Porsche brand manager, guy. So he
doesn't race anymore, does he?
I don't. Every now and then, I think he did. He ran that Porsche Sprint Challenge in 24.
Okay.
And then rumor has it he may start racing again. So we'll see. But yeah, full-time stuff, I know he it's really hard. Like, I went out a few times when I was in California doing some Mazda stuff, and I'd go stay with him, and he'd take me to the studio, and it's like, you see a 1-hour show, Grey's Anatomy, and then I went there, and it was like all day to film a 6-minute deal. Yeah. Right? And I'm like, we're going back to his trailer. He's like, well, I won't have anything to do for 2 hours. And then he comes back, and he's got to do his thing. Okay, I'm done for a little bit. We went and had lunch, come back, and then he's there, and then it's like, and he goes, yeah, hopefully we get to wrap this, and it's like this, you watch the thing, and it's 45 minutes.
Looks easy and simple.
And oh, wow, that's great. And then, but it takes a lot of work and time. And
I'm interested in, you've seen the background, I guess, what people don't usually see in a movie set or in a studio set like that. And you've also seen, the back end of, racing. What would you compare and contrast the two worlds?
It's very, very similar. I mean,
Really?
the logistics behind all that they have to do, they got set room, they got these guys with the props and all this stuff, and then they got a big, huge trailer with, I remember that because I'm a foodie, but, they had all the snacks, and the guy would make whatever you wanted, and you could, it was just like thing. But you got the grip guys, they're designing the stuff and building stuff. So they're taking this down already because they're done filming. They're already building something for the next scene, and they have to move this stuff around. And I mean, the logistics, it's pretty similar, I think, to
I'm sure.
racing. It's like, anything like that. People watch a race and they don't realize how many weeks at the shop it takes and how much the setup is just to get the car get the car on the truck and off the truck and set up.
And that's for one team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let alone the entire series.
The amount of man hours that it takes to get a race going, especially, next week, Daytona 24-hour.
Yeah.
I can't even think about. thousands and thousands of hours of for people getting that prepared for that.
I know,
race.
it's crazy.
And like everything else, that preparation pays off, right? Like any good professional, they make it look easy, right?
Right.
Like he's up there on the screen, and you're just like, oh yeah, it's not that hard. And then you stick a camera in somebody's face, and they just sort of blankly freeze, right? Same thing with driving, right? You see somebody driving on TV, it's like, it's driving. How hard could it be?
Right.
But then you get behind the wheel and you try, and you're like, oh, this is actually very difficult.
Yeah, it's not as easy. I was always amazed, especially some of the higher end sports guys. You get some football players and stuff that would come through the school or start racing, and they're like, "Holy cow! How do you guys do this thing for hours?" And it's like,
Get a whole new respect when you actually try it yourself.
Yeah, it's a whole different deal. So it's.
Let's talk about you. You've driven just about everything under the sun that's got wheels. You've driven the Mercedes. AMG, the GT4, the Porsche Cup, the BMW M4 GT4. Is it difficult to get, to acclimate from one car to another? Do certain things stay the same? How does that work?
I was always that guy I would drive anything I could. I mean, especially in my early days, I would if there was any opportunity to drive any single thing. So I jump in this car or that car. And I remember one time, Thunderhill 25 hour, I think I drove 4 different cars.
Oh, yeah.
And I drove for 18 hours of the 25 hours or something, and it was just, team would be like, oh man, we got this guy, he's sick. Can you drive? I'm like, yeah. And I go jump in that car and,
Wait, don't they have restrictions on that?
They didn't then. I think the one guy even did the whole thing by himself, but it,
that's nuts.
And it was, it was cool. So to answer your question, I think it vastly depends on the driver, because there's obviously a lot of people that are good in, say, a prototype or a Miata or a GT4 car or whatever. And then I always make the suggestion when I have younger drivers that are coming up, what do you say? Drive everything you possibly can, right? And I think it just makes you a better driver where you can adapt, because ultimately your job as a race car driver is to adapt, and you have to adapt to one, as the tire falls off during the race, or you get a little bit of a rainstorm and the dust starts blowing or the wind starts blowing down the back straight at Sebring. You have to adapt to that. You can't do the same lap that you did when you tested last week and it's 75 degrees and there was no wind and whatever, right? So you have to adapt to those situations. So I always looked at it as any opportunity I had driving a car. And it, there's different. 911 drives a little different than the BMW and this and that. But ultimately the feel and the getting around the track and how to maximize that lap time, you figure it out pretty quick. So, or you have to figure it out.
And then that comes with, like you mentioned, experience, right? Like once you realize, oh, I can't do that in the BMW M4 like I can with the Porsche Cup car. Once you start, acquiring that information, then yes, that makes you, I think, a much better racer. We actually had this conversation with Todd Burris when we talked about, his advice was drive as many different cars as you can, as many race tracks that you can go to. It just makes you a better driver, because all that experience is just basically going into your database, and when things go wrong, and in racing things will go wrong, you can tap into that database and say, okay, I need to adjust now because the steering wheel is not straight; it's just going.
Yep. And it happens more often than not, especially So one of my favorite things was when the B-Spec stuff was coming out, and kind of the deal was we'd do tests at different tracks, and every manufacturer would bring a car and a driver, but then we would all swap around, So Cunningham's jumping in my car, and I'm jumping in Kuno Whitmer's car, and everybody drove everybody's car, so you're like trying to adapt from the Fiat to the Honda to the Mazda, and to the Mini. We had all kinds of different cars showing up, and it was pretty fun. Like that was really fun, and then you could kind of compare. Some of these guys, like Peter Cunningham was one of my racing heroes. I remember watching him race when I was younger, and then you getting a chance to race against him. And we actually had a pretty good run in on one of our first races, and it stuck pretty good. But, we had a mutual respect. And we raced each other really hard for a lot of years. So being able to, share that stuff with that and jump in different cars and that, for sure. The more you can drive, the better you're going to be, whether it's a Miata or a Formula 4 car,
Right.
So, and there was lots of times where you'd see, I mentioned Galati earlier, and I remember he was driving the Audi in World Challenge, and then he got an opportunity to drive the LMP car at Sebring. They were doing a test, and then they had McNish drive his car. You know, they kind of swapped back and forth, and his time delta in the prototype was way closer than their time delta to him in the GT car. You know, and they were just like, oh my God, this thing doesn't, you know, you get to turn, it doesn't turn and it doesn't stop and it's this and that. And Mike gets out of the prototype and he's like, oh my God, you won't believe it. You hit the brakes, it slows down. You turn the wheel, it turns. Like, it does everything you want a car to do. It's like unbelievable. You know, he's Italian. He was so happy. And it was really cool to see that, you know, it was just neat to see the difference. You know, somebody that's used to a high downforce light car that does everything right, and then you get into a GT car. You know, it's a different program. You know,
yeah. So. Even going straight from a like a purpose-built race car to a street car. Not that I have any experience in that personally, but I remember I was asked to be an instructor for the Ferrari Club of America event at Sebring. So I think it was the middle of the week. I was like, I'm there. I'll do it. And they assigned me, and I told a little bit of the story in a previous episode. They assigned me a guy that flew down from Ohio, I think it was, and he had a Ferrari Pista, whatever that was. I didn't know what it was. I think it's a 488 Pista. And we had people coming up to the car and they were taking pictures. I'm like, we're in a sea of Ferraris. You know, like, why is this one special, right? And I looked it up on the phone. I'm like, okay. Anyway, so
an extra comma in the price. This one.
The crazy part is that, you know, they were asking him about the ceramic carbon brakes and this and that. And we go out there and this guy's just, he starts telling me his story. Yeah, I raced BMWs, you know, in WRL and this and that. We go out there and he won't stop complaining about the brakes on this Ferrari Pista. He's like, this piece of shit brakes, like it doesn't stop. I'm like, this is a $500,000 car.
Right. This is the best brakes I've ever felt in my life.
He's like, compared to my BMW, like this is garbage.
What the heck?
I was like, does not compute. You know? I could not understand what he was saying. But to your point, yes, like the difference, you know, between, you know, those two are enormous, you know. Let's jump to the world before endurance racing. You were a Mazda factory driver for 15 years, roughly.
Yeah, roughly, maybe a little longer, maybe a little. Yeah, somewhere right in there. Yeah, it was a good long run.
So, how does one become a factory driver, and what does that really entail? So
for me, I started in a unusual way. Well, not really unusual back in the day. I started as a mechanic, and I just, you know, I went to school to be an airline pilot and realized rapidly that I shouldn't be responsible for 300 people. And, you know, I'm a jackass. I need the adrenaline rush. So I got into motorsports because a friend of my dad's, they had built some race cars, some Porsches for Daytona 24-hour back in the day. And then Dave White is his name. He had a very successful shop in Tampa. And, you know, I kind of got into it with him as a mechanic, and I just kind of worked my way through it, won a school, got lucky, you know, and my first race that I did was a Sebring 6-hour with Jim and Joe Jordan in their Mazda Miata before they had spec Miata, right? So we were running it was a 94, and, you know, we had, at that point, you still had to run stock shocks. And so I got in with them, you know, won Rookie of the Year the next year, and then, you know, got some ins with Mazda. Jim was working with Mazda at the time, and, you know, eventually worked with their motorsports program, as I mentioned, but, you know, with the Dempsey deal. And Joe was working for Toyo Tires, and, you know, we did everything we could. I was driving the truck across the country. I'd prep the cars at my place, you know, fix the trailer. You know, sometimes we'd change an axle on the trailer in the middle of the night, you know, sleeping in the truck. You know, we had this, I wish I still had the truck. It was an 87 F350. Single cab, dually, 5-speed, IDH motor, no turbo.
Right.
But it would, you know, tow that 46-foot fifth wheel at 70 miles an hour. It just took it 10 minutes to get there. But I mean, it was great. Anyway, long story short, just did that, and it just kind of, I was there as Mazda was starting to build their motorsports program back up in the mid to late 90s there, and just kind of fell in where, you know, it was my passion. I'd do anything, you know. I'd stay up all night, build a car. I'd fly to California. We'd do this, or, you know, and the core guys, you know, Steve Sanders, Tim Buck, those guys back in the day. We did everything that we could with a very little budget,
right,
to, you know, promote Mazda and get the thing out there. And then obviously when Spec Miata took off, that was a huge deal. And I remember, you know, when that came in, and you know, John Doonan, who's, you know, president of IMSA now, we worked together, and you know, many nights I slept on his floor in his hotel room, and we'd drive across the country doing this, or he'd call me and be like, hey, I'm coming in late to VIR. Can I just crash? Yeah, man, come on. Him and Jim at 2 o'clock, and I'd leave the door unlocked 2 o'clock in the morning. They'd come in. I'd wake up the next morning, they're, you know, sleeping there on the floor. And, you know, we did whatever we could. And, you know, we built a really good program. You know, as the World Challenge program came in the early 2000s with the Protege, you know, and I remember we had a $65,000 budget our first year, and that was including. So we got the car for Mazda, but we had to strip it, put the cage in it, build it, put the suspension in, and then we got the motor from Sunbelt. But we had $65,000 to do that, and then run it for the season in World Challenge. And there was a couple times, you know, we showed up, you know, we had to put the car on an open trailer and just drive it last minute there, and, you know, but, you know, $65,000 for a World Challenge season, you know, and it was just like, wow, you know, and we got into the top 10 that first year, and it was like the greatest thing, you know, small team. And then, you know, Mazda had their Tri-Point was their true factory team, and they had obviously a little better funding and stuff. And I just, you know, stayed with it and did everything, and it just, the timing was right. You know, I kind of came into there, and I don't know that opportunity is there anymore, because, you know, I traded my labor and my mechanical ability for my rides in the early years.
Right.
I don't think anybody, even for like the TCR, to run TCR and IMSA now, it's $600,000.
Right.
That's a pretty high paid mechanic. So I don't know that you're going to get somebody to trade you the mechanic work, but the opportunities are still there. But, you know, to answer your question, I just was there and just stayed with it. And, you know, I worked hard. You know, admit, you know, I back in the day I was young, and you'd stay up for 30 hours and get the job done and get the car there.
I guess more specifically, they came to you and they said, hey, we're trying to develop this motorsports program. Would you like to be, you know, one of our drivers? Is that how it worked?
I wouldn't say they came to me. I said we just kind of absorbed each other into the program, right? We just kind of, you know, everything, whatever it took to go there. You know, we're going to make a car go to the Thunderhill race, or, you know, we got this program going, or whatever. And I caught a lot of. It was interesting. You know, we do go back to that driver rating thing, and they kept me as a gold driver way into my 50s just because, well, you were a factory driver for Mazda, and I'm like, yeah, but it's not really like being a Porsche factory driver. I guarantee you those guys make more in a year than I probably made in 10 years with Mazda. But it was the family aspect of it. And we did, you know, I mentioned Tim Buck. I remember, you know, we were doing some BOP testing for the Miatas for SCCA, you know, and I'd fly out there and he'd pick me up at the airport. I'd go sleep at his house, and then we'd get up the next morning and throw a car on the trailer and drive up to Button Willow and, you know, do the stuff and then drive back, and, you know, just whatever we had to do to make the program work. And, you know, so I wouldn't say, I just kind of got absorbed into it. And then, you know, obviously when the MX-5 Cup stuff came out, I was the head judge for a long time with them. And then, you know, we tried to develop that. You know, it started, the first one we had 3 guys there. And then, it, you know, it's got into quite a great program. You know, that ladder program was amazing, and what it's done for the sport. And you see some of the kids, some of them aren't kids anymore, that are out there going to race at Daytona next week. Some of them won the 24-hour, obviously, and it's all part of that ladder program. Unfortunately, Mazda kind of lost their, you know, once they lost the GT program, they kind of had the prototype going. There wasn't a place to go for everybody every year. But, you know, they still offer a really good stepping stone for people to get to the next level, and it's a great company. They do a lot for such a small company. I mean, we beat some really big companies, you know, big programs.
Well, I would imagine it's a small company here in the U.S., right? I mean, it's not really a small company internationally.
Yeah, it's still, I mean, compared to, you know, Honda, Toyota, some of the big guys, they're quite a bit smaller of a company as far as gross profits, or however you want, how many cars sold and stuff. Right. But it's, you know, I'm a Mazda guy at heart. We have a couple Mazdas in the garage, so it.
I guess the way that you mentioned you absorbed each other in the Mazda Motorsports, it's similar to the way that Mike Moore was absorbed into the podcast.
Yeah.
Right, he was the chief instructor when we started, you know, managing as far as HPD Academy, and I came to him and I said, hey, Mike, we kind of work well together. I'm doing this podcast. You want to do it with me? He goes, okay. Neither of us knew anything about running a podcast.
Right.
Here we are.
Yeah, no, that's how it works.
A little bit of right place, right time, and nobody else could stand the thought of spending an extra hour and a half with you a week. So I just said, all right, I feel bad for Carlos. I'll go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
So thoughtful of you.
You're welcome.
No, and I've enjoyed, obviously when Todd mentioned, would I like to do the podcast? I was like, absolutely. So obviously I started listening and watching and stuff. And I mean, you guys feed off each other really well. It's really good entertainment. So keep up the good work.
You think that we have at least like 25 episodes under our belt with our experience that we portray, not 23 or 4.
24.
Right.
Maybe someday you'll get to that 25.
Well,
You look back, it's going to be, man, remember when we did the 25th episode? That was 400 ago or whatever,
One of the stats that we mentioned earlier was that most podcasts don't reach episode 3. Like 90% of them fail before reaching episode 3. And then those 10% that actually move on, 90% of those will never see episode 21.
Really?
Yeah. So when we reach 21, we're like, we made it.
We're like an infection that just, you scratch at it and it just gets worse
Just
and worse.
stubborn. Like, we're not going away. We don't know if anybody's
Some of our
watching.
subscribers may wish that we would have, folded by now, but I don't know.
It's just like anything. You develop it and then you find it kind of your little niche and you guys are, like the Odd Couple or however that may be. It's good. It's it's engaging and you guys ask good questions and it's like, you introduce some stuff and I've enjoyed. I got to admit, I haven't made it through all of them. I think I've probably about 10 or 11. So
that's a lot. That's probably more than most people have consumed. I mean, we are starting to build a nice little library. So I would say the last few have been like really like top notch. The first, I think the topics were great, but we still had to a lot of rust, to brush off. But anyways, let's move on.
Honestly, while we're on the subject, my suggestion is you should have been recording when we first sat down. I think that's how you should do it. I think that's...
Well, the other thing that I thought about was, we kind of limit it to 1 hour.
Yeah, that's a little short for sure.
Yeah. So when we start doing maybe 2 hours, they don't have to last the whole 2 hours. But yeah, we can start recording early. And maybe that could be like even premium content that, for like premium listeners, they can
peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, like this is what happens before the cameras start rolling.
Yeah, right. No, for sure. I enjoyed that. I was laughing pretty good there. I had to kind of control myself when you did your intro, and then I'm like, oh my god, look, he sounds so professional. It's amazing.
You got to turn it on. Hey, I want to talk about something you mentioned. You were involved in the Mazda shootout as a judge.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the guys that have gone through here with us in the podcast, we've had Weston Workman come through here. He was a Mazda shootout winner. We've had Noah Harmon. He was also a Mazda shootout winner. Were you a judge when they were coming through the program? I think that was like 2023.
No, I think I stopped I think my last one I did was in 2015.
Okay.
That was the height of our European stuff. I mean, I was in Europe 3 weeks out of the month sometimes, and there was a little shift in the Mazda management at that point. There were some of the original guys were retiring, and then they brought some fresh things. And of course, you got new ideas, and they want to do things a little different. And it, I think they've done a great job with it. And it was.
But you were one of the pioneers.
Yeah,
you helped
for
build
sure.
That program.
I was one of the first. There was 3 contestants and 3 judges the first year, and
right.
I'd never done it before, and I just kind of winged it, and it was pretty interesting. I'm a little bit of a jackass. We were talking earlier about movie quotes and stuff, and I'm like, so the kid be there, and I know like Weston was talking about, like, it was crazy, doing this interview, and kids can drive, but then it's like, well, can you talk, and do you know who's this? And I'm like, who the CEO of Mazda America is? And they'd be like,
is that important? Should I know that? It seems like that's. I should have probably studied that.
Yes. And I'm like, well, do you know who Tyler Durden is? And they're like, no.
Just throwing.
And I'm like, okay, well, do you know what
names.
Ackerman is? Can you tell me what Ackerman? And I just.
Are you trying to rattle them?
Well, I just wanted to see how they reacted and what the thing, and then I can tell you, it's not. And I tell them, I said, you don't have to know this. This is just me asking, and I want to know a thing, and I'm just seeing how you react to it.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, it made a big impression to all of us judges when I'd say, do you know who Tyler Durden is? And they don't. And then we'd take a break, and then during lunch, they'd come over and go, really? Fight Club? Really? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, I thought it was like the CEO of Monza from Japan, or, whatever, something like that, So we just kind of developed that through the years. And, I think we picked some really top-notch people. I mean, we had some really great drivers and talent come through there, and they're still killing it,
So I guess one of the questions that I have is, they meaning Workman and Noah Harmon, they talked a lot about the off-track stuff that they were judged on. Why is that like such a big deal? I mean, I understand, they're going to be representing Mazda, they're representing the brand, but it seems like, we talked about this, it seems like you're asking a lot of a 19-year-old, 18-year-old, just to be, that present in front of a camera, in front of people,
Yeah, right. No, I mean, but we were looking at it, and they had criteria, and it would change through the years, and it evolved. But obviously, you want somebody that's going to be a brand representative. I mean, they've got to. You don't want somebody that's just going to blow up on the camera and my car's a piece of shit. Like, Mazda blew up again and whatever. And it's.
And I guess at that point in time, they're all such good drivers that they're separated by such a narrow margin that if one of them is so much better at the other stuff, it's like, all right, we can probably get 0.2 of a second a lap out of this kid to make him that much better. But this other kid, you're never going to turn him into a charismatic, able to carry himself, doesn't get nervous in front of the TV. Like, it's probably easier to coach him up on the track stuff than it is on the business acumen stuff.
Yeah, and it kind of fell in right about that time. I mentioned about 2015. They kind of wanted to change their approach because it was a point where it was open to all ages. We'll say, just to be polite. Obviously, Mazda, the ladder program's kind of supposed to be geared for more younger people. So I was like, well, you have to make the rules. You can't, just because this guy's 45 and's been running a company, obviously he's got a presentation and a camera face and can do all this stuff. And oh, by the way, he's still really quick. If you wanted the younger guy to win, then don't let the older guys come in. And, it's just not, it's not fair for a 19-year-old.
Sure.
Obviously. So, it's a dynamic change, but yeah, they got it. It's part of the deal, and especially now with social media and all that. I mean, that's all a big part of it anymore.
Yeah,
it's a new world, right? So you got to adapt to it, and I mean, if you're 19-year-old and you can turn the fastest lap, and the other guy's a tenth behind you or 0.2, like you said, and he can sit there and sell me the world. He's very charismatic and stuff. That's who you want. Ultimately, the money comes from advertising, right?
Sure.
So
they have to be likable.
You got to have somebody that's going to represent your brand,
right?
So that's the biggest advice I can be to youngsters coming up is to, and we used to throw little clinics at some of the tracks, or we even during that stuff we'd go through all kinds of different things. Here's that and this, and it was really nice. When it was the Playboy MX-5 Cup, we'd have they'd always have a couple playmates, and they would come and they would give a little talk because they, believe it or not, they do a lot of training. I mean, they're well spoken, they're
the playmates,
well read. Yeah, I mean, they're just not good looking women. They were, they could entertain you and pick up in any conversation, and that's was the representation that they wanted for the Playboy thing. And it was they would give a little talk about, hey, you could do this and this. You want to look in the eye, and you want this and blah.
Right.
Or we'd be like, before you take an interview, turn around and make sure there's not a Honda parked behind you. Move over a little bit so the Mazda's behind you, or something, stuff, just little things like that you look for. And we tried to help them. It was not just a shootout, but it was a learning experience, right? Even the guys that didn't win, or the people that didn't win, could take away from stuff, And I was pretty big. We did, I'd have a helmet bag, and the kids would come in from their thing, and they'd pull into the garage, and we're going to do a download in this, and I'd walk over and put the helmet bag over their head and say, "Get out of the car. Where's the fire bottle? Put your hand on the fire thing," and they wouldn't be able to do it. And I'm like, well, what are you going to do when you're in a fire? First thing you do when you get into a new car, you figure out how to get out of the thing. You figure out how to put the fire out, where the master switch is, and all this stuff. Yeah. And that kind of was our, think about things,
Sure.
Practice your exits and all this stuff, because it's easy to do when you can see everything.
So it's fitting that you would bring up the fire thing.
Mm-hmm.
You used to drive Spec Miata.
Yeah, it was everything. I mean, obviously, the particular fire that you're talking about was Thunderhill 25 hour.
Right.
We had taken a NC Miata. In the year before 2008, we had we built a decent motor for it. We were running it on Cup car slicks. We had good suspension. We did tuning, MER, Saney and those guys who had done a really nice job with this car. And, it just kind of fell in. A lot of the prototypes broke, Cup cars broke, and we just, we were just doing our thing, running our pace. And we won that thing overall in 2008 against a bunch of things. And it just kind of fell in our place. The Mustangs were leading for a little bit. They broke a gearbox.
Right.
Porsche Cup car was leading. It ran off the track and, whatever. Prototype was leading. It crashed in the little car or whatever. So anyway, we won that thing. So next year we're like, all right, man, we're going to come back World Challenge motor from the Mazda 6. We're going to put an extra fuel tank in it and all this stuff. And so we were running and we had an auxiliary tank. So our goal was 5-hour stints.
Right.
And I was doing a stint middle of the night, and we had turned out something had ruptured, and it happened really quick. I started getting some fuel smell in the car, and I called Andrus and on the radio, and I said, hey, I'm just getting some fuel smell. I'm going to come in, this lap, and I was in the backside, and coming up the turn, and I remember just, boom, big fireball. I'm like, oh, crap. Reached up, pulled the fire system, fire went out, called Andrus on the radio, and I said, hey, I just had a big fire. I'm pulling off at corner station 10. And when I was slowing down, pulled in, as soon as I hit the brakes, it reignited, right? So I'm big fireball, and I'm like, oh, crap, And I usually run with my visor up a little bit. And when I first got the fuel smell, obviously, I put the visor down, whatever. So I'm sliding up the thing, and I knew where the corner station was. I couldn't see anything. I'm hitting the brakes. I feel the car slide. And I had reached, trying to get out the car and everything. And, it was big fire.
Once you pull the fire suppression system, the lever,
yeah,
it just shoots off one time and that's it.
Yeah, it was a 10-pound bottle. It put the fire out right away, but then obviously when I went to slow down again, all that fuel came rushing in and it reignited, and it was a big fire. I got to admit it was one thing I'll take away, and I try to explain this is I practiced, like I mentioned, I make people practice, and I practiced, and I know how to do this stuff. And even with all that, it was still surreal because when the fire, it's hot, it's terrible, but it was dead quiet, right? There's a freaking 50 cars running around the track. It's no thing, but it was dead quiet.
So all the sound just disappeared.
And I talked to some of my friends that are firemen, and they say that happens because the fire is absorbing using up all the oxygen. There's nothing medium for the noise to transfer. So it was almost and I remember kind of like, whoa, is this really happening for, and then I'm like, shit, I got to get out.
This is really peaceful.
I get out, I run and, stop, drop, and roll because I was, on fire. The corner worker ran over. He's putting stuff out. I couldn't breathe for a minute, this and that. And I just remember, getting out, and I was just like, holy cow. My leg hurt really bad, my right leg in particular. And I was just like, oh, man. And so I'm sitting there. They gave me some water, and I'm trying to catch my breath in this, and I pulled my gloves off. And literally, I don't want to gross you out, but like the skin on the top of my hand kind of came off like chicken skin, like when you cook a chicken, and I'm looking at it, and the corner worker's like, oh my God, are you okay? And I'm like, I guess.
It doesn't really seem like
it. It didn't hurt. Right. At that point,
adrenaline
it hurt.
still.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like, the ambulance comes running up, and my leg was, it hurt. I just couldn't believe how bad my leg hurt. And I'm sitting there, looking at it, and I'm like, And I'm like, I don't want to see what my leg looks like.
Yeah.
And of course they run up, what's going on, this and that. And I said, oh, and this and that. And I said, my leg hurts, so they start cutting the suit off. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to see? My bones or something hanging out? Because it really hurt. And it was just red. So the way they explained to me at the burn center was that, this had got burned so bad that it actually had killed the nerve off.
Right.
And then it was like a bad sunburn. So the nerves were, the full intensity of it. And so it was a big relief there, and then
and this is the helmet that you were wearing.
That's the helmet that I was wearing. You can see.
That's crazy.
I was always big on always wear all your underwear. I don't wear any kind of Under Armour or any kind of polyester type thing because it would for sure melt to you, right? So I only wear the Nomex, and at the time, all my Sparco gear was top notch, and obviously it saved my life for sure. That and the ability just to have him practice to get in and out of the car. And my co-driver Charlie, the one that we drove together for almost 25 years, he was like, I'm really, I really wish it wouldn't have happened to you, but I'm kind of glad it was you because you're the only one of the four of us that could have got out of the car.
Yeah.
So, and I had made them practice. All three of my co-drivers, I made them all. We always practice the exits there.
And how long was it from that time until the time you got back in the car?
So that happened the beginning of December, and I was back at the Roar 2010. I have to say, top of the time sheets with my new team Fall Line, and we won the championship that year in GS. So,
a couple of weeks.
Yeah, a couple of weeks. I mean, I still had some bandages on my hand and stuff, but it was, you see a lot of guys when they get in thing, the hands always get burned. And it's just because it's so tight right there. And then, I got a little bit of a scar there. I don't know if you can see it on my arm there, a little bit up here, but that's the only scarring I got, and that was just where the suit was, tight. Right?
Yeah.
So there wasn't an air gap there, but I got the suit too. But it did everything did its job that it could, and you look back at it and it's like, well, if I had been wearing an NHRA suit, I probably wouldn't have got burned at all. But I also would have probably passed out 3 hours earlier from the heat exhaustion. So it's like there's always a compromise, right? Well, you wear the best safety gear you can for the task that you're doing. Then obviously you could wear more safety gear, or I could stay home and watch TV, right? So, but I'm a big advocate. Obviously, I ended up the next year buying Safecraft and moving forward with developing products for that. I got really big into the safety. I'd always been kind of a safety guy. I'd been consulting with Safecraft before that,
right?
Trying to develop better products and easier stuff to use, and just from a driver's aspect, because I'd go use a product and I'm just like, whoever built this has never been in a race car in 110-degree heat with gloves on trying to put a seat. It's like, and I always was, I was good at that kind of stuff, designing stuff that worked for the environment that you were in. And so I was always a big safety advocate. So, obviously, we mentioned the Mazda shootout. I try to do that. I give talks at, Porsche Club events and stuff. And I'll probably give a talk here soon at the HSR event. I mentioned John Dunan's a very good friend of mine. He asked me, he said, can you come give a talk at the HSR event and get, some of these guys just a little bit more up to speed to where, because it's easy. I mean, it's really easy. I'm only going to go out for a couple laps. I don't need to put my underwear on. I'll just slide the suit on, or I'll, whatever. And
and even in the in HPDE, we compete in the Super Lap series, which is like a time attack.
Mm-hmm.
I've even caught myself, like in a rush, and without, like, the helmet didn't already have the hands, which is the Simpson that we use.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I've never had to use it.
Right. Famous last words.
Yeah, and then those words echo in my head. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put it
30
up.
seconds.
Yeah. It's and I did and some of your listeners can look it up. It's I think if you Google like Grassroots Magazine Espenlaub Fire, I wrote an article for them, and it gets put around every now and then. But I remember, when I was early on, my dad was a pilot, and we flew gliders a lot, and I was young, and we're putting the seatbelt on and thing, and I'm like, why do we have to wear these things? We never, whatever. And he's like, well, it's one of those things. If you need it and don't have it, you're probably never going to need it again.
Yeah.
That kind of stuck in my head, and it's the same thing. Yeah, I go to these track day events and HPDs, and the cars are faster than their car. They got higher terminal speed at Sebring than their
they're getting fast.
Top line GT3 cars, and your guys are out there in t-shirts, and it's just, to me, I don't ever get on the track. I don't care if I'm driving a Miata or a prototype. I wear all my gear every time, Hans device, the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it because I know it can bite you, and the probability is real low. But unfortunately, every now and then it does happen, and you see people get hurt. And ultimately, we want people to be safe. And yeah, it's hot to wear a 3-layer suit and underwear.
Yeah.
But I can tell you the fire burns just as hot on a test day as it does during a race. And oh, by the way, there's not as many safety guys there during the test day usually, right? You got some top-notch people, especially, next week in IMSA, they got a team. They're there. Sometimes the car doesn't even stop rolling. They're already there,
Right.
So it's much more dangerous, I think, test days or track days and stuff like that. And the probability is low, but man, I go to some of these things and I'm testing a full-on cup car,
Mm-hmm.
and these, Corvettes going by me on a straightaway like I'm tied to a pole, and I'm just like, wow, that thing's going. That's hauling, you know.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I started shying away from instructing at HPDE events, just because I caught myself going down the back straight at 150 miles an hour in the right seat with a 19-year-old in a GT3 RS, and I was like, I don't know if I really want to be here right now. And it started kind of planting the seed. These cars are getting so fast. But even before that, since we're talking about fire, I went out with a student. He showed up for his very first day at the track with a whole entourage. He had like a crew. He had, fuel jugs and the whole 9 yards. And I was already like, for me, it was like red flags, right? Like, this guy, this is his first day out here. I met the guy. We go out there, and he was like down to earth. He wasn't doing anything crazy. So I was like, oh, I worried for nothing. Like, this guy's really, good to go. I think our second session, the car starts sputtering somewhere around coming out of between 8 and 9. Yeah, around 8 and 9 at Sebring. It starts sputtering. I look over at him. He's like, "Oh, we're out of fuel," but it can't be. I filled it up before we came out. And I was like, "Hey, just pull in here." So he pulls in. Yeah, it's out of fuel, so we get towed in. No big deal. So I walk away. I come back like 15 minutes later. His mechanic is over there. He's inside the hood, like looking it over. I go, so what happened? Like, just curious. And he looked at me and he was like dead serious. He goes, the fuel rail was not tight all the way, so it was fuel spitting all over the engine. And he looked at me, he says, "I'm surprised you guys didn't catch on fire."
Yeah.
I was like,
Thank
me
God.
too.
Yeah, right. And I'm glad. It's funny that you say that. The first time I was ever on track, I was at Sebring. This is 2006, probably. Never been on track before. Didn't even know you could do it. I went up there with ironically, the name of the organization was Safe Motorsports.
I remember.
They were no longer in existence. They let me on track. No instructor, right? So I get there and I'm just like, I'm just smart enough to know that seems like a terrible idea.
Yeah.
So the guy in the garage next to me is obviously, he's got the trailer and the truck and all that kind of stuff. So he's obviously been there before. And the guy had a Corvette that had done a bunch of work to it. And I had a Corvette at the time. So I said, "Hey man, like, do you mind taking me for a ride? Because I don't know where to pull out of the paddock, whether it's a right or left, right?" So he said, "Sure, no problem. Hop in the car." We head off. The warm-up, the outlap, we get to turn 7 and the car catches on fire. So I didn't even make it a third of the lap. No, not my car. I was riding.
Oh, the guy.
He was giving me, right.
Yeah,
I was sitting in the right seat, and I just said, "Hey, can you just take me out in the first session to, help me out a little bit here?" So it was his car. It had a ton of work to it. I don't know what happened to it, but yeah, we came out of 7 and just pulled off there, and smoke billowing out of it. Yeah, it was a good time. That was my introduction to the hobby.
So did he pull over and you guys jumped out?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep, for sure.
I taught for Bondurant for a couple of years, and I taught pianos for, I was probably a professional instructor for 10 full years, and, obviously rode with hundreds and hundreds of people. And I got to a point where I was just like, I don't think we need to do this anymore. I mean, the video systems are really good.
Yeah.
The data systems are amazing. You can do pretty much everything you need to do and not have to. And, I'm in a position where I didn't have to do that. If I was a young guy again, trying to get, absolutely, I would go do it again. But
sure.
At this point, it's.
Yeah, but to your point, in HPD scenario, we're out there as instructors in t-shirt and shorts.
Yeah.
Especially at Sebring, it's so hot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's really hot, and I can tell you, after you catch on fire and you have to get your skin moved around your body a little bit and stuff like that, it's
good trade-off.
It's worth. Yeah.
Changes you.
Yeah, it for sure. And I get on guys, Sometimes some of my co-drivers, I'm just going to, I'm like, take that freaking polyester shirt off and put a shirt on. Like, it takes 30 seconds,
Sure.
Dang,
that
that goes by quick.
We're going to have to bring you back. I still got 2 pages worth.
Right.
It was a lovely drive. I got to see my college roommate who flies for UPS. I stopped at his place in Melbourne last night. And then
Where did you come from?
Tampa. I live in Tampa.
Oh, okay. All right.
And I'm a logistics guy, so I like to always plan my things. So I saw him. I went to the chicane club, did some sim time with my hurt shoulder, make sure I can drive good. I went and saw Tim Lewis. I'm going to go see Marcelo Abella when I leave here. Driving to the Everglades after that, and I got a meeting tomorrow with a trust thing that I'm a
busy man.
All right.
So I'll be happy to come by anytime you want.
Okay, so that's the deal, because I got 2 pages worth of stuff that we're not going to get to. So if you are willing to come back, we would love to have you back so we can finish this up. So what we're going to do then, we're going to jump into my favorite segment, which is rapid fire questions.
Oh boy.
This is where I fire off questions and you try to answer them as quickly as possible.
So I'm a married man, so don't ask me any silly
Anything? No, I intentionally left that question out.
We're hoping to retire that question at some point in time.
It started kind of losing its punch.
We get the same answer every time from sensible people.
19-year-old, like, okay, whatever.
I just thought it was really. She did that commercial with the Mustang where she walks around and does the burnout. And that was pretty cool for car. That was really good.
Charles may have been the first person that actually gave you the answer you were looking for. Now you're not even going to ask him.
I'm going to ask it the next time when you come back. I'm going to put it back in here. Okay, let's go. Rapid fire questions. I think we got like 15 minutes, so here we go. You've driven just about everything under the sun. Mm-hmm. Which was your favorite car to race?
I got to say, my favorite race car was the Mazda RX-8 GT car. Yeah, it was, still back in the early days, no ABS, no traction control. We had a sequential gearbox, but you still had to shift it with a lever, and it was like, obviously with the 3-rotor, that thing was super loud, and it was a oral experience, and it made lap time so much different than the cars it was racing against. So you really had to. I mean, it was a fast car. I mean, I saw
a video of it. I think you guys turning laps at Daytona. Well, not turning laps. You were racing at Daytona, and it sounded like an F1 car.
Oh yeah, it was super neat. We had Chris at Sparco made us these special balaclavas that had this foam around the earpieces. So when you had your helmet off, you looked like Princess Leia. But it made a difference, and it wasn't that the decibels were loud; it was just the frequency.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'm still a little thing, but I have a special place in my heart for that car because I feel like that was it was a tube frame car, and it was kind of the end of, I feel like, where you could go build a car. Right? They were built at Speed Source, and you could build a car and go compete against Porsches and BMWs and stuff. And it was, they had to move the BOP around and stuff, and they just kept knocking our RPM down until, and then, but like I said, it was just a surreal car. The Mercedes AMG was an amazing car. Any Porsche you get, any of the new cars you get, and it's really, and I got to say, 2:00 in the morning at Barcelona, it's really nice to just reach up there and hit that paddle instead of having to do a heel-toe downshift or whatever. And
of course.
It's, but yeah, that RX-7, that's a special place in my heart.
All right, rapid fire questions.
Yep.
Number 2, most satisfying victory and why?
And we're going back to the thing, which was better, Miss February or Miss March? It's hard to say. I'd got to say it was our last race with Charlie Putman. We had raced together. It was me, Shane Lewis, Joe Foster, Charlie Putman. This is retirement race, Spa, 12-hour, rain, snowed, the whole thing, and we won the thing overall. And I mean, it was a amazing way for him to end his career. And then it's just, for us as a team and a family, it was surreal for sure to win that race like that, especially overall, because there were some pretty big teams that came in there, and we just did our thing. And to send, I always said, to send Charlie to pasture, that was a good way to send him out there. So that was for sure.
All right, number 3. Be honest. Are some racing series just rich people cosplaying as racers?
Interesting.
That means yes.
I haven't been involved so much in the States anymore.
Right.
So I would say, yeah, there's some of them.
I've heard from other pro drivers, the Ferrari challenge is pretty bad.
Yeah, I've never had any dealings with Ferrari challenge, but I have a lot of friends that coach and run there. And
would they echo that?
For sure.
Okay.
They would say that for sure. I can't say it for sure because I haven't witnessed it.
We just lost any chance of ever having one of those drivers join the program, but that's fine.
Whatever. They can come defend it. All right, let's go. Number 4. You're running P2, final lap. Jesus is leading. Jesus, our Lord and Savior. Do you give him a bump for the overtake, or do you just let him have the checkered flag?
Bump for the overtake if it's for the win. Nothing. I'm sure he's going to understand. Right? But yeah, as a racer,
amazing.
It's the win. It's for the win for sure. I mean,
where do you come up with these questions?
That's why you're there. I don't know.
I amaze myself.
Yeah.
That is spoken like a true racer.
It's only Jesus. He'll be fine.
You'll get over it.
He's
wow.
Man, he's good at that whole forgiveness thing. I think
he is very good at forgiving. Fine. All right, number 5. Who gets treated more like rock stars? Movie stars, musicians, or race car drivers?
Having been with, dealt with Patrick Dempsey and all forms of thing, I would for sure say movie stars, but I would imagine rock stars are probably right there too.
Right.
I think that's probably that's one of those things that whatever group they're in, they think it's the other people.
They want to be with the other group.
Right, like athletes want to be musicians, and musicians want to be actors, and actors want to be, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember one time we were in Vegas doing a race, and then, we were watching the F-16s fly by. And then later on that night, we were at a place getting dinner, and the guys were there, and they were freaking pilots, Air Force pilots, and those are my heroes, and I'm like, oh my God, and they were like, oh man, we were doing our pattern work, and we were looking down there going, God, I wish
we could race.
Wish we were down there.
So we were like, yeah, come on. And then, they were Thunderbirds, so the Thunderbirds are based there, so they gave us a tour, and then we brought them out to the track. And,
so grass is always green.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
It's all good.
All right, let's continue. Hopefully we'll get through this before we run out of time. Number 6, when people showed up expecting Patrick Dempsey and got you instead, did you ever enjoy their disappointment?
Oh, of course, because that I got to drive, right? So if I'm in the race car, it's not that I enjoyed their disappointment, but it was I appreciated their disappointment, and then enjoyed that I got to race that weekend.
All right, sprint race. You, Shane Lewis, and Patrick Dempsey. How does the podium finish look like? P1 through P3.
What kind of cars?
Let's call it a cup car.
Cup cars. I got Shane a little bit in the cup car. We were really close in the Mercedes, and back and forth and whatever. But yeah, I have him a little bit. So I'd say me, Shane, and then Patrick.
Okay. Number 8, you've raced with movie stars, factory drivers, and rich amateurs. Who has the most fragile ego?
The factory guys.
Really?
Yeah. Really, because obviously they're to do what they do week in and week out. I was never in that kind of a thing. I've been in situations where I've been on teams where, it's a pro team and it's like, and you got to perform.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're not, you're out the door. Right. So they're kind of built on ego. And then, if their ego gets thing, man,
I can see that.
Both Shane and I have put many of those guys, made their egos a little thing, and they start crying, well, the car's this or car's that, and they're like, well, Charles just did that, or Shane just did that.
Yeah, car seems okay.
Oh, look, let me pull out my phone. Oh, yeah, there's Oberlin's. Let me call Oberlin, see if he thinks the car's pushing, or whatever. Yeah, it's
interesting. All right, number 9. What has racing taught you about life that most people never learn because they never put themselves in that kind of risk?
Building your character and appreciating what other people bring, right? I mentioned the team thing, right?
Right.
I was never in the military or anything, but I can imagine, you're 2:00 in the morning and we're throwing a gearbox in the thing, trying to get the car back out, and everybody's just working together, and that camaraderie and that teamwork. I don't think a lot of people can appreciate that.
Right.
I tell my daughter all the time, it's the hardest thing. The worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. And that's, at the time, I think she was upset because one of her friends said something to one of her other friends. And I'm like, go be in a fire at, 2:00 in the morning, or, I was in an airplane crash one time. You push through it. But if you've never had that experience, you don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Did you say you were in an airplane crash one time?
Yeah.
Yeah, now we're definitely going to have that back.
That's right.
There's not enough time, right? Yeah.
I've survived a lot of stuff, which is why I got to be so safe. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be here, because I've definitely used more than 9 lives.
So we got it on camera. You're going to come back. You agreed to come back.
Anytime.
All right, number 10. We're going to close this off with this one. When the final chapter of your racing career closes, what do you not want to be remembered as?
The guy that bump drafted Jesus.
The guy that bump drafted Jesus, for sure.
Or not.
I would still bump him, but
or not Patrick Dempsey.
I'm sure that wouldn't be popular with a lot of people, but I not want to be remembered for. I don't know. I've pissed off a lot of people, obviously, in the deal, and I've always tried to be a very good, fair racer and give respect and race in room and stuff. But I saw a meme the other day, and it's like, you're going to meet people that'll tell you I'm the nicest guy in the world, and you're going to meet people that tell you I'm the biggest asshole in the world. and both of them deserve what they got. So I'll leave it at that. I don't want to be remembered as an asshole, but I know there's plenty of people that will say that I'm an asshole because honestly, I just gave back what they gave to me.
Of course.
Yeah.
All right. I think we got like 3 minutes. Let's do a guest challenge real quick. Do you have two guests in mind? This is your chance to challenge 2 of your friends to come on the podcast. So if you want to look straight into your camera, which one of these over there?
There's 2 with lights on. They said to look at the lights on.
That one.
That one? So, I mentioned that I kind of do a round robin. I went and saw Tim Lewis Jr., excellent race car driver. Super not... He's a racer, and I even talked to him. I said, hey, they're going to ask me this, and I'm going to say your name because you're local. Literally, he's 5 minutes from here. Okay. And I was like, he was like, well, what am I going to talk about? And I said, you got all kinds of stuff to talk about. Trust me, they'll do it that. So Tim Lewis Jr., who's going to be racing the TMR Honda TCR car this weekend in Daytona. Great guy. I've known him since he was a little tiny kid, one of my favorite people on the planet.
Okay.
So Tim Lewis Jr. and then Shane Lewis, because he's obviously, he's not up the street so much anymore.
Yeah,
he's not too far from here, but he's been racing in the desert so much. So good luck trying to get him, and I'll do everything in my power to get him here.
Yes,
but he's definitely somebody you need. Obviously, great character, rich in history, super good guy, and he needs to be here because, again, it's too low. And neither one of them are related. I don't even know that they know each other really well. They've met each other,
both Lewises.
But they're both Lewises, And I'm like, so anyway, those are my 2.
Awesome. You know what'd be great? Having you and Shane here at the same time.
Yeah,
that would be something that maybe awesome. We can shoot for, right?
Yeah, we could tell you some pretty good stories from that.
All right, so Tim and Shane, if you guys are interested in coming on the podcast, simply go to offtheracinglineline.com and fill out the form. Let us know when you want to come in, and we will make that happen. It's been amazing chatting with you. Time flies, right?
Oh my, I can't believe it. It's like really amazing.
Yeah, we definitely want to have you back. So remember, everything interesting happens off the racing line. See you guys next time.
Everything interesting happens off the racing line. I took the hard road, I've earned these stripes. The road from dreamer to driver ain't always straight. Kept my head down, fueled by faith. I lost some time, but found my name. Pressure made a diamond out of me. I've arrived, and I brought receipt. Wrote my truth between the scars and his peace. This ain't luck, I've earned this seat. Off the racing line where my story begins. Voices scream break. I burn past the cones. Storms behind me, focus on the next turn. I've carved a path where none existed. Built from the bruises most people resisted. Now every mile is proof I'm alive. A late bloomer still chasing the line. I've arrived.